Ayan, isang mapagpalang umaga po sa bawat isa, sa mga tao na naririto sa simbahan at ang mga tao rin na nasa kanya-kanya mga tahanan. So ayan, isang mapagpalang linggo po sa bawat isa sa atin. Ayan, so ngayong araw po, ay ngayong linggo, ang topic po natin is umiikot sa buhay ng isang tao na isa lamang siyang ordinaryong tao pero sa power ng Panginoon or sa kadakilaan ng Panginoon, itong tao na to ginawa siyang ordinary to extraordinary. So nagkaroon ng changes sa character niya kung paano nababago ng Panginoon or paano niya binago yung sarili niya nang kasama yung Panginoon. So yun, ngayon pag-usapan po natin na sa buhay ni David, kung paano niya pinagkatiwalaan ng Panginoon, paano niya pinut yung trust niya sa Panginoon during doon sa tatalakayan natin ngayong araw. So syempre, share ko lang yung about na topic na to, kung bakit ko siya ginawang from ordinary to extraordinary. Narinig ko kasi itong message na title na message kay Pastor Bong ng CCF na about sa mga character sa Bible na ginawa ng mga ordinaryong tao lamang sila pero by the grace of God, ginawa ng Panginoon na extraordinary yung mga tao na or mga biblical character na yun. So ngayon, pag-usapan natin ayun nga. So from ordinary to extraordinary of the life of David trusting God. So before that, let us pray. So Heavenly Father, we come into your presence this day, O God. Salamat Panginoon sa kadakilaan mo sa buhay namin, sa pag-provide ng araw na ito, na kami ay pag-aral ng inyong salita, Panginoon. Kuskusin mo kami, Panginoon, ng iyong banal na Espiritu, nang sa gayon ng iyong pagpapala, ang iyong kadakilaan ang siyang kumilos sa buhay namin. Nawa, Panginoon, ang bawat salita, Panginoon, na pag-aaralan namin, Panginoon, ay siyang makatulong sa amin to realize that you are the God, Panginoon, na patuloy namin pinupuri kinapasalamatan. Samahan mo kami ngayong araw, Panginoon, sa pag-aaral ng salita. Sa pangalan ng Jesus. Amen. So yan. So ang ano po natin, bago yan, pag-usapan muna natin yung main character natin ngayong araw. Siyempre, who is David in the Bible nga ba? Diba? Parang nung Sunday schooler tayo, pag narinig natin yung salitang David, or yung pangalan David, ang naiisip natin agad yung lumaban kay Goliath, di ba? Sa mga Sunday schooler teachers dyan, na yun yung lagi ng mga minsan kasama sa tawag dito, sa pagtuturo din sa mga bata about sa paglaban ni David kay Goliath, di ba ganon? So una, he was born in Bethlehem. So Bethlehem, a small city in the south country of Israel, about 10 kilometers away from Jerusalem. So naka-highlight dyan yung kulay red. So David was an Israelite from the tribe of Judah. He grew up under the reign of Israel first king. So, Israel first king is the King Saul. When he was 30 years old, when 30 years old na si David, he himself became the Israel's second king. Pangalawa naman, si David ay the youngest son of Jesse, tama? So, David began his career as an aide at the court of Saul in Israel's first king. And gusto kong i-highlight dito yung sinasabi na he doesn't seem to be an impressive person at all. David is not an impressive person at all. So in other words, masasabi na si David ay isa lamang ordinaryong tao na nag-aalaga ng mga tupa. O karaniwang tinatawag or di ba karaniwan pag sinabi natin ordinary, usual na merong quality sa iba na meron ka. Ay ganon. So, ilan lamang ito sa mga pagpapakilala natin sa character ni David ngayong umaga. So, meron tayong mga questions dito before natin talakayin yung full na pag-uusapan natin ngayong umaga. So, una, ano na lang po, tawag dito, personal. So, how did you know that God is working in your life? Saang area? Saang situation? Saang manner? At paano mo na-discern na yung kumilos na yon or yung nangyari na yon is working ng Panginoon? Sa area ng buhay natin or sa ang situation nangyari or sa ang manner. Pangalawa naman, why trusting the Lord is necessary thing for us as a Christian to consider? Bakit ba we need to trust the Lord? Hindi yung sa sarili natin. We need to trust God other than sa mga bagay na nakapaligid sa atin or even the world. Ano yung, bakit necessary yun para sa atin. So let's answer that on our personal reflection muna. Next, how you view the difference between trusting the world and trusting God. Di ba pag sinabi kasi natin trusting the world and trusting God is a very contradiction talaga yan eh. I'm sure ko lang kapag ako nagtatanong ako sa mga kaibigan ko in regard sa isang topic, pag tinanong ko yung mga kaibigan ko na non-Christian, iba yung perspective nila sa perspective ng mga Christian na kakilala ko. Yung mga iba yung paniniwala nila sa isang specific situation sa paniniwala ng mga Kristiyano na nasa Panginoon. Yung gano'n. So, sa sarili po ba natin, paano natin nakikita or paano natin nabu-view yung difference between trusting the world and trusting God? Next, what is your giants in life and how did you overcome it? So, ano yung pinaka-biggest giant sa buhay ninyo na tawag dito na ano sa inyo, na bigay ng parang mabigat na situation and paano nyo siya na-overcome? Sino po yung kasama nyo during that time? Maybe your family, si Lord, or yung mga taong kakilala natin. So, itong 4 na questions na to is masasagot natin yan sa pagpapatuloy natin pag-aaral ngayong umaga about sa pagtitiwala ni David sa Panginoon. So, ngayon, next po, ayan. So, what's in David's heart? Ano ba yung nilalaman ng puso ni David kung bakit isa lamang siyang ordinaryong tao, pero dahil alam niya na ang Panginoon ang siyang tutulong sa kanya, ginawa siyang extraordinary ng Panginoon. Pag sinabi po kasi natin heart, yan. So pag sinabi natin heart, or what's in your heart, ano ba yung nilalaman ng puso natin? Di ba minsan kapag tinatanong tayo, or ako, kapag nagtatanong ako sa mga mentor ko, tinatanong ko sa kanila about sa isang problem or isang situation, ang lagi nilang tinatanong sa akin, ano ba yung laman ng puso mo? Ano ba yung kahalagahan ng heart sa atin? Or parang anong importance ng heart sa bawat isa sa atin? No, parang pag tinatanong tayo, sino ba yung laman ng puso mo? Ano yung laman ng puso natin pagdating sa ganung mga bagay? And David's heart, ano ba yung makikita natin sa puso ni David kung bakit ito yung napili kong na tawag dito, parang pinakita sa akin ng Panginoon kung paano na ipakita yung pagtitiwala ni David sa ganung mga bagay. So, pag sinabi natin heart, it is a personality or disposition. Pag sinabi natin disposition, it is a tendency of something to act in a certain manner under given circumstances. So, ang alam ng iba, pag sinabi natin heart is yung tawag dito, biological, sa biology yung organ, pero in some pagpapaliwanag o sa ibang kahulugan, ito rin ay masasabing sa personality mo. Ano ba yung laman ng puso mo kung bakit ganito ka mag-act, ganito ka mag-isip? Kasi yung nakaka-affect sa bawat galaw natin, yung nilalaman ng puso natin. Disposition. Yung tendency ni David na gumawa ng isang bagay or isang sa certain manner under given circumstances. May tanong dito, may isang tanong na pwedeng sumagot. Pwedeng sumagot tayo. Sasagot, tatawag na lang po. So, think of a situation in your life kung saan ginawang extraordinary ni Lord yung bagay na yun. Diba? Sa lahat ng sa process din sa buhay, masasabi natin na yung laging ginagawa ng Panginoon ay hindi lamang ordinary. Laging extraordinary yung mga bagay na ginagawa ng Panginoon. So, think of a situation in your life kung saan ginawang extraordinary ni Lord yung bagay na yun. Tihana. Sige pa. Kahit isang situation lang na ginawa ng extraordinary ni Lord yung bagay na yun or yung situation or maybe in some manner. Example, ginawang extraordinary ni Lord yung academic year ko kahit hindi talaga kaya ng mata ko, pero na-survive ko yung almost 1 year. Yung mga ganong situation ba or mga pagkakataon. Yun lang.
Ako alam niyo na, dahil lahat ng healing na ginawa ni Lord, ginawa niya extraordinary. Kasi hindi ko lang naranasan yung healing, pero yung intimacy with Him.
So, thank you, Ted.
Mga araw na may sakit ako.
So, pinagaling. So, extraordinary bagay yan. So, sino pa po? Si Ate Ingrid. Patabi niyo yung mic. Extraordinary, gano'n.
Siguro kasi since Father's Day ngayon, extraordinary yung ginawa sa amin ng Panginoon yung provision niya after the death of Papa. So, for me, it's an extraordinary na provision ng Panginoon. Yung comfort na even though, yun nga, may death na nangyari, pero mabilis kaming nag-cope up. Kasi that's because of God, yung grace ng Panginoon, tsaka yung comfort, yung peace na binigay niya sa family namin.
So, thank you po sa mga sumagot. Now, mapapansin natin na yung working ng Panginoon is minsan hindi natin napapansin na work pala yun ng Panginoon. Pero God is working extraordinarily lagi sa buhay ng bawat isa. May tatlong objectives po tayo ngayong araw about sa buhay ni David. Sa una, how David successfully defeated Goliath. Para nakapagtaka na isa lamang siyang taga-alaga ng tupa pero ginawa siyang extraordinary ng Panginoon. Pangalawa, what are the keys why David defeated Goliath? Paano niya ba natalo? Ano yung ginamit niya, yung mga ganyang... Later we're going to discuss. Pangatlo naman, how God changed David's ordinary capacity to extraordinary capabilities. So yun yung title po ng Bible study natin ngayong umaga. From ordinary to extraordinary, the life of David trusting God. So, define muna natin, pag sinabi natin ordinary, it is expected in the normal order. Or, masasabi na natural lang. Di ba pag sinabi natin, kamusta araw mo, ordinary lang, ibig sabihin parang walang bago or walang changes na nangyari, mga ganon. Next, common quality or rank or ability, same. Parang ordinary lang na ganito yung nangyari sa kanya, ordinary lang din nangyari sa akin, or same, or common quality. Next, deficient in quality, kulang sa quality. Hindi tawag dito, kompleto siya, pero iahambing siya sa iba, hindi siya masasabing extraordinary, dahil ordinary lang siya. Ibig sabihin, for example, isang bagay, i-compare natin siya sa isa pang bagay na mas angat sa kanya, masasabi na yung isang bagay na yun ay isa lang ordinary. Kasi diba? So, next, yun, may masasabi na mayroon pero kulang or deficient in quality. Yun yun. Pangalawa naman, extraordinary. It is go beyond what is usual. Or naka-highlight dyan yung word na go beyond. Or lagpas pa sa quality na expected mo. Diba? Extraordinary, ganyan. Next, exceptional or kakaiba na walang although may some qualities, pero may iba pa rin qualities na angat sa isang bagay. Or next, quality of special functions or ibang-iba or kakaiba. Special function, ibig sabihin may iba siyang function na wala sa iba. So, i-open po natin yung Bible natin sa 1 Samuel 17. So, 1 Samuel 17. So, dyan po ikot ang ating talakayan ngayong umaga about sa buhay ni David, kung paano nga ba siya nagtiwala sa Panginoon. So, ayan, basahin po natin sa 1 Samuel chapter 17. So, now, the Philistines gathered their armies together to battle and were gathered to Soko, which belongs to Judah. They encamped between Soko and Azekah in Ephes Dammim. Verse 2, and Saul in the men of Israel were gathered together, and they encamped in the valley of Elah, and drew up in battle array against the Philistines. So, nakaready na sila. So, verse 3, the Philistines stood on a mountain on one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, which balanced between them. So, magkabilaan sila. Verse 4, and the champion went out from the camp of Philistine, named Goliath, from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. Verse 5, he had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. Verse 6, and he had bronze armor on his legs, and a bronze javelin between his shoulders. Verse 7, now the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his iron spearhead weighed 600 shekels, and a shield bearer went before him. So si Goliath is full armor siya. Verse 8, then he stood and cried out to the armies of Israel and said, why have you come out to the line up for battle? I am not a Philistine, and you the servants of Saul. Choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. So china-challenge ni Goliath ang mga taga-Israel. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. So may consequence. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servant and serve us. Verse 10, and the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight. together. Pakibasa po sa verse 11 ni Ate Ingrid. 11 to 21 po.
When Saul and the Israelites heard this, they were terrified and deeply shaken. Now David was the son of a man named Jesse, an Ephrathite from Bethlehem in the land of Judah. Jesse was an old man at that time, and he had 8 sons. Jesse's 3 oldest sons, Eliab, Abinadab, and Shimea, had already joined Saul's army to fight the Philistines. David was the youngest son. David's 3 oldest brothers stayed with Saul's army, but David went back and forth so he could help his father with the sheep in Bethlehem. For 40 days, every morning and evening, the Philistine champion strutted in front of the Israelite army. One day, Jesse said to David, "Take this basket of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread, and carry them quickly to your brothers, and give these 10 cuts of cheese to their captain. See how your brothers are getting along, and bring back a report on how they are doing." David's brothers were with Saul and the Israelite army at the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines. So David left the sheep with another shepherd and set out early the next morning with the gifts as Jesse had directed him. He arrived at the camp, and as the Israelite army was leaving for the battlefield with shouts and battle cries. Soon the Israelite and Philistine forces stood facing each other, army against army.
Verse 22, And David left his supplies in the hand of the supply keeper, ran to the army, and came and greeted his brothers. Then, as he talked with them, there was a champion, the Philistine of God, Goliath by name, coming up from the armies of Philistines, and he spoke according to the same words. So David heard them, narinig ni David yung sinabi. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, or nakita nila si Goliath, fled from him and were dreadfully afraid. So the men of Israel said, "Have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And it shall be that the man who kills him, the king will enrich with great riches, will give his daughter and give his father's house, exemption from taxes in Israel." Verse 26, Then David spoke to the man who stood by him, saying, "What shall be done for a man who kills the Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God?" And the people answered him in the same manner, saying, "So shall it be done for the man who kills him." Verse 28, Now Eliab, his older brother, heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was arose against David, and he said, Why did you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle. And David said, What have I done now? Is there nothing a cause? Then he turned from him toward another and said the same thing. And these people answered him as the first ones did. Verse 31. Now, when the words which David spoke were heard, they reported them to Saul. Nag-report sila kay Saul. And he sent for him David. Then David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are a youth, and he a man of warrior for his youth. But David said to Saul, Your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went after it and struck it down and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its bird and struck and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. Verse 37. Moreover, David said, The Lord who delivered me from the foe of lion and from the foe of the bear will deliver me from the hand of these Philistines. And Saul said to David, Go, and the Lord be with you. Verse 38, So Saul clothed David with his armor. So ito na. And he put a bronze helmet on his head. So pinagsuot na siya ni Saul na mga warrior or sinusuot na mga warrior. Next, verse 39. David fastened his word to his armor and tried to walk. for he had not tested them. And David said to Saul, I cannot walk with these, for I have not tested them. So hindi niya kayang buhatin or dalhin yung mga sinuot niya. Then he took his staff in his head, and he chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag, in a pouch which he had, and a sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. Verse 41, so the Philistine came and began drawing near to David, and who bore the shield went before him. And when David Philistine looked about and saw David, he restrained him, for he was only a youth, ruddy and good-looking. Pakibasa po ng verse 43 hanggang sa verse 51 ni Kuya GP. Verse 43 to 51 po.
43. To 51. He said to David, am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Come here, he said, and I'll give you your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. David said to the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defiled. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. Today I will give you to the carcasses of the Philistines' army, to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord, and he will give all of you into your hands. As the Philistine moved closer and attacked him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him, reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the scabbard. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. And when the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran.
Verse 52, now the men of Israel and Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistine as far as the entrance of the valley and to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell along the road to Sha'arim, even as far of Gath and Ekron. Then the children of Israel returned from chasing the Philistines, and they plundered their tents. Verse 54, and David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to the Jerusalem, but he put his armors in his tent. When Saul saw David going out against the Philistine, he said to Abner, the commander of the army, Abner, whose son is this youth? And Abner said, as your soul lives, O king, I do not know. So the king said, inquire whose son this young man is. Then as David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him to the court of Saul with the head of the Philistines in his hand. And Saul said to him, whose son are you, young man? So David answered, I am the son of your servant, Jesse of Bethlehem. Bethlehem. So yan. Diyan po ikot yung pag-uusapan natin ngayong umaga. Balik tayo dito sa una. So how David shows his trust kay Lord? Anong character mayroon si David? Or I mean, nilalaman ng puso niya. Just like sinabi ko kanina, di ba? Kung ano kasi nilalaman ng puso natin, yun yung mas nangunguna. Ano yung nalaman ng puso ni David kung bakit niya nagawang humarap kay Goliath even though alam niya hindi siya qualified to fight Goliath. David is not even a warrior. Hindi siya nag-train. Although nag-aalaga siya ng tupa. Ganon. Ayan. So, yun. Next. So, una, ano yung makikita natin sa buhay ni David? Una, he is courageous or man of courage. Sino ba namang bata ang haharap kay Goliath na napakalaking tao at lalaban sa kanya? Diba? Taga-alaga nga lang siya ng tupa eh. Eh kung yung mga, ayun, sabi sa 1 Samuel 27:32 and 39 to 40, and the people answered him in this manner, saying, so shall it be done for the man who kills him. Ay, 32. Sorry, mali. So, and Saul said to David, you are not able to go against the Philistines to fight with him, for you are youth. So, bata pa si David, wala siyang capacity to fight this Goliath, kasi napakalaki na ito. Or, malaki talaga si Goliath, I mean. So, mapapakita or makikita natin sa buhay ni David na yung courage na meron siya ay kakaiba. When we say courage is a mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and hinighlight ko po yung withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. Yun yung makikita natin sa buhay ni David when we say courage sa buhay niya. He withstand danger, yung fear, at yung difficulty to fight this Goliath, even though hindi siya qualified to fight Goliath. Pero, dahil nagtiwala siya sa Panginoon, pinakita ng Panginoon na yung pagtitiwala na pinakita ni David sa kanya or kay Lord ay mapapalitan ng isang magandang bagay. So, nakaipasis po yung word dito na I will go sa verse so I will go. So, sa verse 32. So, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go. So, si David, yung courage niya, sa salita pa lamang niya, nalalapit or siya yung lalaban kay Goliath, mapapansin na natin na nandun yung courage niya to fight this man. Eh kung si Saul nga, hindi yung mga armies ni Saul or yung mga Israelites takot na takot kay Goliath, how come na itong David na ito or batang lalaking taga-alaga lamang ng tupa, may lakas ng loob na humarap kay Goliath? Ayan. Nagpapakita na he is ready and willing to fight Goliath, even David is not a warrior. Sino ba si David? Si David ay isa lamang na taga-alaga ng tupa. Ay, anong laban niya doon? Isa lamang siyang shepherd. Next. Ano ba pag sinabi? So, yun. David said to Saul, people shouldn't let Goliath discourage them. So, I am your servant, so I will go and fight this Philistine. So, word pa lang na I will go, mapapansin natin or makikita natin sa buhay ni David na meron siyang courage to face Goliath even though alam niya na maliit lamang siya. So, next, what do you think are the qualities of warrior? Ano ba yung mga qualities ng warrior na meron yung mga warrior na wala kay David? So, una, mapapansin natin na si David muna, comparative analysis siya, gano'n. So, si David ay isa lamang shepherd. So, dito sa 1 Samuel, dinescribe si David na isa lamang ordinary boy na nag-aalaga ng tupa or yun. And pangatlo, si David ay lumaban kay Goliath with 5 stones and isiling lamang. And if we are going to compare David sa isang warrior, yung mga warrior is well-trained. Bago sila isabak sa isang labanan, may mga training pa yan para malaman kung may lakas nga ba sila ng loob na iala yung buhay nila na makipagpatayan or makipagdigmaan dun sa mga ka-awa. Next, yun, strong and doesn't afraid to die. Next is sword, shield, or even our armor. Yun yung mga sinusuot nila ng mga warrior para makipaglaban. And if you're going to compare warrior kay David, sadyang napakalaking pagkakaiba na si David ay lumaban gamit lamang yung 5 stones and sling compared sa mga warrior na gumagamit ng sword, shield, or even armor. So, 1 Samuel 39-40, David said to Saul, I can fight in these things, I'm not used to them. So David took them off, he took his walking stick in his hand, and went to fight smooth stones for the stream. Next, he put the 5 stones in his shepherd's bag and held the slings in his hand. Then he went out to meet Philistine. Andun yung courage ni David to fight Goliath even without wearing any armor. Gumamit lamang siya ng bato and sling. Sino ba namang bata gagamit ng ganun lalaban sa isang champion? Next, David is not enough, but God made him more than enough. Hindi qualified si David to fight Goliath kasi alam natin na hindi siya warrior. Anong laban niya sa mga isang champion? No? Eh, kung mapansin natin, pag sinabi natin, yun, champion, walang nakatalo sa kanya, just like Goliath. Okay, if you're going to look sa buhay ni Goliath, ito. So, sabi sa 1 Samuel 17:4-7, he is a giant. Pag sinabi natin giant, malaki. Ayun. Yan. Next, si Goliath ay nagsuot ng 3 meters, nagsasize ng 3 meters tall. Mayroong bronze helmet, coat of armor made of bronze na 57 kilo, and protection in his legs, javelin in his back, spears and shield. So makikita natin na si Goliath is wearing a full ear armor. No? Pangalawa, he is a Philistine champion. Pag sinabi natin Philistine champion, wala pang nakakatalo sa kanya kahit sino. At hindi pa siya natatalo ng kahit sino man. So makikita po yan sa 1 Samuel 17 verse 4 and 17 verse 23. Next, Israelite soldiers are all afraid of him. Sabi sa 1 Samuel 17:24, sabi dito, and all the men of Israel, when they saw the men, fled from him, and they were dreadfully afraid. Now, makikita natin sa buhay ni David na hindi siya natakot to fight this Goliath na kahit itong mga warrior na well-trained na makipaglaban sa mga digmaan, hindi siya natakot to face Goliath. Sometimes we see ourselves na we're not qualified or enough, but God knows that we are more than qualified. Alam natin na si David, hindi nga sabi ko kanina, hindi siya qualified. Pero dahil pinut niya yung pananampalataya at trust niya sa Diyos na siya ay pagtatagumpayin, ginawa siyang qualified ng Panginoon. Nakita na, so, why was David not afraid of Goliath? While the entire army of Israel, including Saul, was so fearful. Just like sinabasa natin kanina. So una, because he knows who is the true and living God. Alam ni David kung sino ang totoong Diyos. Ito namang si Goliath kung makapagsalita at i-defy ang army ng Panginoon ay paninira ang mga sinasabi. Sabi sa 1 Samuel 17 verse 26, David asked the men beside him, "What did you say? What is the reward for killing this Philistine and taking away this shame from Israel? Who is this Goliath anyway? He is only some foreigner, but nothing but a Philistine. So why does he think he can speak against the army of the living God?" Sa tingin po ba natin masasabi ni David na sino si Goliath para i-defy ang pangalan ng Panginoon or yung army ng Panginoon kung hindi alam ni David kung sino ang Panginoon? Yung ganong concept pa. Walang capacity or hindi kayang sabihin ni David yung ganitong mga salita sa harapan ng mga soldiers na yon kung hindi alam ni David kung sino yung totoong Diyos or kung sino yung Diyos na yon. Sa ganitong sitwasyon, alam ni David kung sino ang tunay na Diyos at kung ano ang kaya niyang gawin. Hindi siya naniwala sa sinabi ng iba na hindi niya kaya. Maraming mga taong nagpigil sa kanya. Bagkus pinatunayan na dahil kilala niya ang Diyos, may kakayahan siyang ipakita ang lakas na gamitin niya yung lakas ng Panginoon na hindi nanggagaling sa kanya, bagkus nanggagaling sa Panginoon. Alam niya na when he defend or nag-defend siya sa Panginoon, nag-defend siya sa Panginoon, hindi siya matatalo. Alam ni David kung gaano makapangyarihan ang pangalan ng Panginoon. Hindi masasabi ni David yung mga ganitong mga salita sa harapan ng mga soldiers na yun, sa harapan ni King Saul, sa harapan ni Goliath, kung hindi niya kilala kung sino ang totoong Panginoon, kung sino ang totoo at buhay na Diyos. Pangalawa, ayan, sabi din, "But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you. And this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God of Israel." Nakikita natin na David ay nagdepend lamang sa kapangyarihan ng Panginoon. Pangalawa, ito, David's great faith in God allowed him to stand up unto their enemies. Yung great faith na yung nagpapakita na David trust God, or yung faith na yun, yung nagpakita si David na nagtiwala or trust in God, yung pinakita sa buhay ni David. So, allowed him to stand up to their enemies from impossible to possible. Impossible talaga na matalo ni Goliath babaliktad na. Matalo ni David si Goliath na napaka-imposible. But because David trusts God, yung impossible na yon ginawang possible ng Panginoon to defeat Goliath. Next po, makikita natin na he built on past experiences where God watched over him. So dito, basahin ko na lang po yung naka-highlight. "I have had the job of taking care of my father's sheep. Every time a lion or a bear has come to carry a sheep from the flock, I have chased the wild animal, struck it down, and freed the sheep from its mouth. If the wild animal turned to attack me, I grab it by the fur under its jaw and beat it to death. I killed both lion and a bear like that, and I will do the same to the foreigner Goliath. He will die because he made fun of the army of the living God. The Lord saved me." Doon po natin mag-emphasize. "The Lord saved me from the lion and the bear, and He will also save me from this Philistine." Saul said to David, "Go and may the Lord be with you." Dahil alam ni David na sa mga past experiences niya na tinulungan siya ng Panginoon, nagtiwala siya na sa pagkakataong lalabanan niya si Goliath, hindi siya pababayaan ng Panginoon. Kaya nakakatuwa na when we have experienced the goodness or the greatness of the Lord, may capabilities tayo or may strength tayo to face another day because alam natin na tutulungan tayo ng Panginoon. At dahil alam niya na God will save him and protect him, nabuo yung confidence niya to fight Goliath. David stood when everything told him to run. Si Saul hindi naniwala. Yung kapatid niya hindi naniwala. Through faith, he won a great victory for the people of God. Yung faith na meron si David, nagpapakita na naniwala siya. That's why si David ay tumayo at nakipaglaban kay Goliath. That's why he won a great victory for the people of God. Nakita natin yung trust na meron si David, yung buong pagtitiwala ay makikita sa buhay niya sapagkat yun ang ginawa niya, kaya nagtagumpay siya. Isa sa pinakamagandang ginawa ni David ay hindi siya nagpatinag sa kalakasan ng ibang tao. May mga tao man na pumigil sa kanya, di ba? So, hindi siya natakot to fight because alam niya na God is with him. Sa buhay natin, kapag alam natin at naniniwala tayo, just like yung belief na naka-circle, may kakayahan tayong tumayo sa panibagong buhay or sa mga pang-araw-araw na ginagawa natin, and every day, we are going to win a great victory sa buhay natin. Next, what does it mean when David showed courage to fight Goliath? Ano yung makikita natin sa buhay ni David kung yun. Ano yung naging resulta when David believed to God? He won a great victory. So una, he never underestimated the power of God. Sa tingin niyo ba, hindi naman lumaban si David na, Lord, tulungan mo ako kasi baka mamaya matalo ako. Pero nandun yung confidence niya na makikita sa verse 45 to 47 na, then David said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword, with spear, and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head away from me. Alam niya na hindi lang hanggang dito yung capacity ng Panginoon, but naniwala siya na mas angat pa doon sa kayahan ng Panginoon. That's why David never underestimated the power of the Lord. Alam niya na mas kilala niya kasi ang Diyos at kung ano ang kaya ni Lord compared sa sinasabi ni Goliath. Para nakakaya naman na may alam ako at mas kilala ko ang Panginoon na ikaw, hindi mo naman siya kilala, pero you have the capacity to say those words na hindi mo alam na mas makapangyarihan ang Panginoon ko sa Diyos mo. Yun yung gustong ipakita sa atin ng David. Sa buhay natin, sometimes we see ourselves na we are not qualified or enough. But God knows that we are more than qualified. Mapapansin natin, Lord, hindi ko kaya yung ganitong bagay. But if you're going to put our trust to the Lord, hindi man tayo qualified sa isang specific situation or isang specific na pangyayari sa buhay mo. But God knows that we are more than qualified. The greatest things that we can learn from the life of David right now is that dahil alam niyang limitless si Lord and ginamit niya yung chance na yun to use that power na hindi nanggagaling sa sarili niya but sa Diyos. Kapag alam mo na si God is on the throne, wala kang talo. Diba? Pag alam mo na si God is makapangyarihan and si Lord is yung may capacity to fight everything ng mga nangyari sa buhay mo, kapag alam mo na ang Diyos ang naghahari sa trono ng buhay mo, hindi ka matatalo. Just like sa buhay ni David. Pangalawa, he knows that the Lord will save him from Goliath. Sa tingin niyo ba lalaban si David doon kung hindi niya alam at wala siyang idea kung tutulungan siya ng Panginoon or hindi? Nandun pa rin yung courage niya to fight this Goliath kasi alam niya na the Lord will save him from doon sa mangyayari na yun. The greatness of the Lord is living in Goliath. Hindi yung sa sarili ni David yung nagpatunay na kaya ko. Ako ang lalaban. Hindi naman sinabi ni David kay Saul na ako ang lalaban kay Goliath kasi kaya ko. Ako ang lalaban kay Goliath kasi kaya ko siyang patayin. Kundi ginamit niya at pinut niya yung pangalan ng Panginoon at pinut niya yung trust niya kay Lord na siya ay magtatagumpay. Pangatlo, he relies in God's sovereignty and trusts that God will be with him in difficulties in life. Sabi po sa verse 37, moreover, David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. Walang ibang nirelayan si David, kundi ang Panginoon. Sa tingin niya ba kapag nag-depend si David sa sarili niya at nagtiwala lamang siya sa sarili niya, magtatagumpay siya to fight this Goliath? David is not even a warrior, sabi ko kanina, and wala siyang capabilities to fight Goliath. But because with the grace of the Lord at nagtiwala siya, nagtagumpay siya. When he offers to do battle with Goliath, he displays confidence in God at hindi sa sarili niya. Kaya nga ginamit niya ang pangalan ng Panginoon, I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, the God whom you defied. Hindi niya sinabing, I display confidence sa sarili ko, and I'm going to fight this Goliath kasi sinisiraan niya ang Panginoon namin, sinisiraan ng Diyos niya. But because hindi siya nagdatan sa sarili niya, and nagtiwala siya sa Panginoon. Yung pagkakataon na naranasan ni David na ang Diyos ay buhay, isa yun sa ginamit ni David to prove that God will deliver him. He relies in the Lord without hesitation if matatalo ba siya or hindi. Hindi niya namang sinabi ng Lord, bahala ka na kung matalo ko or hindi. Pwede niyang sabihin yun. Pero sinabi niya na hindi. Ako ang mananalo. Because the God whom I serve ay nasa akin. Hindi nga siya nakinig kay Saul. Even yung kapatid niya na pinapauwi lamang siya at magalaga ng tupa, hindi niya pinakinggan. May confidence to face Goliath even without the qualities of a warrior. Dahil may kasiguraduhan siya na kapag naniwala siya sa Panginoon ay mananalo siya. Yung confidence ni David ay isang uri ng confidence na walang hesitation. Diba? Sometimes sa buhay natin pag may confidence tayo, pero there are some hesitation kung magtatagumpay or hindi. Pero David showed yung confidence na meron siya ay walang hesitation. So yan yun. So the Lord who rescued me from the claws of lion will rescue me from this Philistine. David has a true confidence in genuine faith. Nang dahil pinagkatiwala niya yung pananampalataya at yung trust niya sa Panginoon, mayroon siyang nakabuong confidence at genuine na pananampalataya. It is important to note that David did not deliver himself, but God delivered him. Hindi niya sarili yun na lakas ang ginamit niya. Because it's not about David. It's about the faith of David. Kung wala yung trust ni David sa Panginoon na magtatagumpay siya, hindi magkakaroon ng victorious result yung buhay niya. Next. So, David's only weapon is the Lord. Sa 1 Samuel 17:45 to 46. Yun nga, you come to me with a sword, but I come to you in the name of the Lord. Hindi nga siya gumamit ng ibang weapon. Ang ginamit lamang niya, 5 small stone. Hindi pa nga nagamit yung 5, isa lang. Yun yung sling niya. Wala siyang ibang ginamit na weapon kundi ang kalakasan at pangalan ng Panginoon. So, yun nga, wala siyang suot na kahit ano. Just a sling and 5 stone. Anong laban niya doon? Sa Goliath na yun. But because David's weapon is the Lord, anong palag ni Goliath? Sa buhay natin, no, kapag alam natin na ang Diyos ang weapon natin, lagi tayong magkatagumpay. Ayan. So all the people gathered here will know that the Lord doesn't need swords or spear to save people. No? Nakikita natin na si David ay isa lamang ordinaryong tao, but because nagtiwala siya sa Panginoon, si David na isang ordinaryong tao lamang ay naging extraordinary because pinut niya yung pananampalataya niya sa isang Diyos. Sa inyong pananaw, let's analyze the story. What if David didn't defend and use God as his weapon? What do you think might happen? Mananalo ba siya or matatalo? So sinabi niya, andito ako, lalaban ako sa sarili ko without using sa capacity or without using the power of the Lord. Nag-depend lamang or nag-depend siya sa sarili niya. Sabi sa verse 47 yan nga, that the Lord doesn't need swords or spears to save people. And how did David won the battle? Because David knows God better. Because David knows God better than Goliath knows God. Kaya sa buhay natin, kapag alam mo kung sino yung Diyos, wala kang talo. Just like ginawa ni David, dahil alam niya na ang Diyos is a victorious God and magpuprotect sa kanya, David knows, at dahil alam niya yung capacity ng Panginoon, hindi niya naliit yun, kundi pinakita niya na magtatagumpay siya. And they show, sabi, sa Psalms 18 verse 2, the Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock in whom I take refuge usually. And the horn of salvation is my stronghold. Alam niya na kapag nagtiwala siya sa Panginoon, na bilang isang rock niya, yung fortress, lagi siyang matatagumpay. And next, what's the result when David puts his trust to God? When the battle was over, it was David and not Goliath who won the victory. Parang sa buhay ni David, makikita natin na yung buong trust niya, pinakita niya at pinunta sa Panginoon at sino ang nagtagumpay? na isa lamang ordinaryong bata si David, na si Goliath isang champion na wala pa nakatalo. But because David put his trust to the Lord, it was David who won the battle and not Goliath. And what David teaches about trust? Ano yung pinapakita ni David about sa pananampalataya or sa pagtitiwala natin sa Panginoon? Ano yung maintin natin sa buhay ni David na bakit sinabi niyang magtitiwala siya sa sarili niya? Una, one thing we can conclude from our examination of David is not God. David is not depend on himself, but he depended sa word ng Panginoon. David trust is completely that he is willing to face down bears and lions to rescue one of his sheep. Dahil dun sa experiences na yan, ginamit niya yun to finish this Goliath. He is also willing to do hand-to-hand combat with 9-foot giant Goliath because he firmly believes that, sabi sa 1 Samuel 17:37, the Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. Kaya kapag alam natin na in the past, God being so good sa buhay natin, may pangahawakan ka even up to this time. Ito ang challenge sa bawat isa. How many of us would walk up to an armed giant with nothing but a slingshot and a handful of stone and say, I trust that God's got this? Sino sa atin ang, for example, kung tayo, balik tayo sa time ni David, sino sa atin ang magsasabi na, Lord, I will fight? Dahil alam, sino magsasabi ng ganyan na, I trust that God's got this? Kaya sa buhay ni David, nakikita natin yung pananampalataya niya, is hindi niya in-underestimate, kundi nagpakita siya ng courage, na yung courage na meron siya ay nanggagaling sa Panginoon. And as a conclusion, David's trust is outstanding. Pwede naman yung mga army na lang ng Israel yung lumaban kay Goliath, pero hindi. Even mga army takot. Pero dahil alam ni David na when he put his trust to the Lord, lahat ng bagay na mangyayari sa kanya is outstanding. And just like sabi sa verse kanina, when David, nung natapos na yung laban nila ni Goliath, sino nanalo? It was David who won the victory and not Goliath. Kaya sa buhay natin, when we put our trust to the Lord, just like sabi ko kanina, kapag alam mo na God is on the throne, wala kang talo. Wala tayong talo sa mga pangyayari or sa mga situation. And sana po ito yung naging reminder sa buhay ng bawat isa na when we put our trust to the Lord, when we put our needs sa Kanya, He will give us courage to face another day to fight different kinds of negative situations that might happen in our life. To God be the glory. And so ngayon po, I ask everyone to please stand up and let's close our Bible study. My input. Ay, sige, dahil 10:12 na po. Sorry. Ayan, so tayo po ay manalangin at papurihan natin ang Panginoon. After po nun is kukuhanin po ng offering natin ni Jermao. Ayan, so tayo po ay manalangin. Salamat, Ama Panginoon, sa patuloy na pagkilos mo sa buhay namin, Lord God. Salamat, Lord, dahil pinakita mo sa amin na when we put our trust in you, Panginoon, lagi kami mananalo. Salamat, Lord, sa buhay ni David na ginamit mo to show, Panginoon, kung gaano ka kadakila at gaano ka kapangyarihan sa buhay namin. Now, we don't need to underestimate your power, O God. Now, we don't need to depend on ourselves, Panginoon, but we need to put our trust in you, Panginoon, dahil kapag kami nagtiwala sa inyo, lahat ng bagay ay magtatagumpay. Salamat, Panginoon, sa umagang ito, sa pagbubulay-bulay ng inyong mga salita. Salamat, Lord, sa maikling oras na yon na we reflected sa kadakilaan mo sa buhay ni David, na maaaring mag-reflect din sa buhay namin. Lord, teach us, Panginoon, to always depend on you alone, to put our trust in you, Panginoon, because we know at the end of that plan, Panginoon, sa mga ginagawa namin, lagi kami magtatagumpay because you are the God of victory. We offer everything to you, Panginoon, sa umagang ito. Naging sa aming offering na kukunin, iaalay, Panginoon. Ikaw po siyang patuloy na magpala na ito at purihin ka, Panginoon, sa pagpapalang pinatulog mo sa bawat isa. Yun lamang po, Panginoon, pinupulit, pinapasalamatan ka namin sa pangalan ni Jesus. Maraming salamat.